Hey everybody, thanks for coming to our session. We appreciate all of you. I'm going to use a little tactic I learned from a talk earlier today. I just have to say, you are the most beautiful audience I've ever seen in my life. Yes.
What you want.
Yes. And I don't say that to everyone. So, we're here to talk to you about layout in Drupal 8, and aka Little Shop of Layouts. And it's a pretty broad topic once we started thinking about how to frame our conversation. And well, I'll get into that as we move forward. But if you're a designer, site builder, themer, editor in charge of producing content, layout is an important consideration. But what do we mean by layout? So layout can mean, as I said, many things. It can mean the look and feel of your content on the page. It can mean, we're talking about grids and columns. Do you have a 3-column layout, 2-column layout? Are we talking about headers and footers, sidebars, asides? We're talking about CS theming, regions, templates. Are we talking about the layout initiative in Drupal? And yes, all of those things. So we only have, 45, 50 minutes?
They're here now. We can keep them as long as we want.
It's true.
Yeah.
But we're going to try to skim over some things and then go in more in depth in other things. So who are we? My name is Dan Moriarty, Minneapolis Dan on Twitter, and I'm the creative director with Electric Citizen.
I'm Adam Fuchs, Fuchs. I'm a front-end developer and site builder for Electric Citizen.
And this is our first time co-presenting.
Yeah, my first time at all, so be gentle.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the first time giving a talk on this subject, so I'm a little worried we might go a little long, so we'll kind of see how it goes and maybe alter the talk a little bit depending on what you guys want to hear about. But to start out with, I'll say we're going to cover layout in Drupal 8, what's included in core, and then what sort of third-party modules can you look into using that will help you on your way. And we'll do some demos of how we can do these different approaches in Drupal. So landing pages are a good starting point, I think, when you're talking about layout. This particular example is just grabbing some pre-made template and kind of altering it a little bit for our talk. But someone, a designer or whoever, hands you a page like this, and your job is to figure out how to put this together in Drupal. Home page is often a challenge, or anything that you guys familiar with the term landing pages and what that means generally. So you look at this and how am I going to build this, and how are my editors going to be able to manage this content and layout, and what are the right tools to use? And it's not intuitive right out of the box, maybe for someone new to Drupal, or in Drupal 8 some things have changed. So how are we going to build that? And just to be clear, I thought once we had our little shop, I was going to start to work this guy into the talk, and then it just seemed wrong. So,
yeah, but you got to put him in that. Everybody loves.
Yeah, everyone loves Planty.
Yeah, I know Seymour is the guy that owns the shop, but I don't know the plant's name either. Bad research. Oh, nice.
Thank you.
That was a test. I knew his name the whole time.
All right. So layout in core. What does Drupal provide by default? Let's look at some of the. We're going to look at how Drupal does layout in core, from the themes and regions part of Drupal, and working with templates and blocks and views, display modes, the WYSIWYG, the layout API, and then extending Drupal into areas such as panels, paragraphs, themes, and grid systems. I thought I'd just briefly address this whole issue of layout in core, which is kind of a new thing that I am learning as recently as a month ago, I feel like. And so maybe you're not familiar with it either, but layout is one of the strategic initiatives for Drupal 8. It's currently being led by a nice guy named Tim Plunkett, who's been to our camp before, and is it Emily Nouveau? And they are working on improvements to make those kind of decisions and tools that you need to make those kind of landing pages better equipped in Drupal core. So one of the first things they released was the layout API. There's no UI for it. If you're working in Drupal 8, you'll see this. What it does is it just registers layouts and shares them between modules like panels, page manager, display suite, which we'll look at in the talk. These are different layout tools. And so they don't all have to have their own system for managing layouts. You can have one set of layouts and they can share them. There's some cool stuff coming down the pike. There's field layout, which is out as an experimental module now that duplicates display suite, which again we'll look at as we get into our talk, but that lets you move your fields around into regions. And there's feature plans for things like a landing page builder, theme layout, and per entity override. So as I get into all this stuff, I just thought, well, first question I was going to ask is how you're managing layout today, but maybe a better question of the audience is who here identifies more as a front-end developer type? Just a quick show of hands. And who here is thinks more of a site editor kind of role, or a designer, themer, site builder? Anybody? Few? Yep. And some back-end developers? I think we have a few there. Yep. Okay. So I'm not sure as I talk here how familiar you are with some of these concepts like panels and paragraphs and such. So I'll just kind of look out at your eyes and see if you're
glazed over.
Yeah, glazed over or busy tweeting or reading, doing something else, and try to gauge what's interesting you most. So starting out with layout, I think one of the core things to think about first is themes, and this might seem obvious, but of course the theme that you use is going to have a big effect on your layout. And as some of you or all of you know, you start out with your theme. In Drupal, it's Bartik is the default theme. You see that little graphic up there. It might be very familiar. It's been in my life for a long time. And Bartik provides you with the concept of regions, which we'll explain, and it has some blocks already placed. It's got some responsive theming. It's already thought about some of the things the way your pages look. These are regions that a theme like Bartik provides you out of the box, and just a quick overview for anyone who needs it. The concept of regions, these are areas where you can, in your layout, where you can put your content. And a lot of the tools we talk about, like panels and, well, I guess not so much paragraphs, but it's just in a weird way it is. Yeah. About, do I want to have my content put up on top or in the sidebar? And so, these are some of the very base level layout type decisions you have to make, and you'll see that out of the box, Bartik provides you with some CSS and some template files, so they're already making some initial layout choices for you. So moving beyond Bartik, there's many theme options, including rolling your own. A very popular one that I know a lot of people are into is Bootstrap. So who here uses Bootstrap in their theming? So yeah, a good number of people do. And that's giving you additional layout choices that, in terms of your grid system, and it has additional theme settings for things like your breadcrumbs, your navigation, tooltips, all these preset layout options, and you just define your regions to match the layout you want. Well, that's when you're making your custom. Sorry, when you're making a custom theme, you can make a lot of these decisions for yourself. But this is where a lot of people start with layout, and I just wanted to highlight some of the key differences between a system like Bootstrap and some of the other grid systems when it comes to layout. Bootstrap's providing these classes in the templates, right? So it's providing you the foundation, and then so if you want to edit your content, you're following this pattern. So the markup in your template affects the layout, right? Versus using some of these other grid systems like Suzy and Singularity and Neat, or if you're using Flexbox, or for your content. I mean, you can use it for a whole page layout, but generally we use it as more of a inside your overall page content. There you're working with Drupal's default classes and affecting your layout via CSS. So with these, you're not saying, well, like I had back here. Oops. You're not saying I've got to match. If I want my layout to look a certain way, I've got to alter the code. You're able to do that all within your CSS. So I find that a more flexible way to affect layout. But I do know that Bootstrap is useful for getting started, which is
especially if you're not super comfortable with Sass, CSS, things like that. It's just gives you a place to start.
Yeah,
makes it easy.
So templates. Templates are the next core thing that you want to look at when you're thinking about layout. And when it comes to Drupal 8, we're talking about Twig.
Yay.
So Twig, probably the biggest change to layout, or one of the biggest, I'd say,
yep.
in Drupal 8, replacing PHP template. And if you're familiar at all with the concept of templates, you can create custom ones and affect the way that everything from a page gets laid out to an individual node or piece of content. And if you want to learn more about Twig, if you haven't, you can certainly look online. It's part of Symfony. And what we're going to do from here is let Adam do a little demo of how you can work with a Twig template to affect your layout.
Sure. Is this playing? How do you play the video?
Use this click.
Click? Okay.
But you have to do it. You ready for this?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go for it.
I think?
Yeah, so like he was saying, there's a lot more Twig templates in Drupal 8 than there is in 7. And the huge reason for that is that they're included in each other. So a field will be included into a block, which will be included into a region, which will be included into a page, which will be included into your HTML. So everything is nested, and it's all kind of component-based, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. So the way that I usually like to start is base core themes like Bartik, Classy, they give you templates for all of these things. They all already exist. So why not copy one of those into your sub-theme like I'm doing here, rename it, and then use it from there. That way I know it works because it's core. Like they would never screw it up, right? Versus me who would just go off on his own and probably not end up at the right spot really quick. So in this demo here, I'm just copying Bartik's block template, putting it into our OC sub-theme, and then switching the name and clearing cache, because you have to clear cache to register the new file. So, and the nice thing about the template too, Twig automatically detects hierarchies. So if you have a base theme and a sub-theme, I can have a block template in my base theme that adds some classes, and then I add my special classes in my sub-theme. And they're two completely different files, but it just knows which one to use because my sub-theme is set as default. And it's inherited from the base, which is cool. So in this demo, the whole point is I'm going to create this custom block, right, which you'll see over and over in these demos. So what I'm doing here is I'm turning on Kint. Who's familiar with Kint and debugging? Anybody? Nice. Yeah, it's an awesome thing because I can just click on something and it will tell me all of the pieces of it. And so in order to do that, you have to go into your services YAML, which I just did a little bit before, turn on debugging, which will give you these green areas that said, here's all of these template suggestions that you can have. So now I know what to name the template. And then when you go into the actual template, this is Bartik's default block template. And they give me some classes already, and then content, all of that. I'm not going to go into like Twig language because it's an animal. But you can take all of these things and then customize them however you want. And this sub-theme block template will spit out that markup just the way I want it. So I'm creating an animal button because we like a pet shop, the little shop of layouts, pet shop. Yeah. And then I'm saying, okay, I have a field that I created on this block. That's the nice thing about blocks. They're fieldable in Drupal 8. And I want a color picker field because I want my editors to be able to choose if this button on this block is going to be pink, green, sand colored, whatever the heck they want. So I'm going to say, after I get there, after I add my block title in my block, in just a second, you'll see me typing other things. This is going a little slower than
I thought. We'll kind of gauge your reaction to this after we get through it.
Yeah, so here I'm going to Kint, and that's the Kint content, I'm basically telling Kint to look at the content of this block and spit out the markup, which you'll see in a second. I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. Clear cache to make it work, that's Kint. So I click on this thing, that's saying that's my block content. It shows me all my fields I have. I click into the button color field. The first instance of it, the markup, I know that this editor chose salmon. So I can spit out that as a class on the button and automatically theme it. And if they chose moss, it'll change to moss. So you can do some pretty cool things. And how I'm doing that is I'm saying in Twig, okay, set this variable of color based on the markup of the field. Same thing that you can do with TPL files in Drupal 7, except for it's just easier. It's so much easier in Twig. Unless you don't like Twig, then it's way harder, but I suggest learning it because once you figure it out, it's way easier. So I'm just going to create a div around my content, so it's going to wrap the entire content of this block in this class.
And just to be clear here, we're not intending this little demo to be like, okay, here's how you do it, make sure you're following along exactly.
Yeah.
But we just thought, let's show you how one way we're affecting layout by editing a template. And once this, we've got a couple of these, and we'll kind of get your opinion here if you find this part helpful, or if it would be easier just to talk through it.
One of the nice things is all of the Twig filters that they have, that without, so I can spit out the content, but without this field, without this field, without this field. I've only been Drupaling a couple years, but I could never figure out how to do that in a TPL file without an insane amount of ifs, ands, ors. It's nice. So yeah, there I'm changing the button color, and it's going to change to green.
Yeah. So you did all that.
All that just to change the button color. Or to let an editor change the button color, because I just could have done it in SAS.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
All right, so we know that we can edit a block template to do things like add those kind of functionality, like a color picker, or we could just change an H2 to an H3. Simple stuff, or we can get much more advanced. Display modes. Display modes, also known as view modes. I get so confused about the right word to use here, but this is very familiar to anyone who's worked in Drupal 7, right? This is a very low-level way to affect your layout with your content types. Oops. You can choose the order that your fields come in, and you can choose to show labels. You have some formatting options, right? But none of this will help you lay out a page like in multiple columns, or move stuff from a header to a footer. So it's very limited out of the box. Blocks got a big upgrade in Drupal 8. Blocks in Drupal 7, you go to the admin UI, it looks like that, right? And it's been an unchanging part of core since 7 got released. It had the title and body fields only, one-time use of a block, and it was difficult to manage UI. Unless you switched over to using context or panels or some other option to manage your content. So new and improved in Drupal 8. The UI still looks almost the same, right? But things have been improved. For starters, everything is a block in your site. For example, things that were sort of hidden from editors to change in the past, now you can do, like the site name. You can just click edit and edit it like a regular block. And things like, they're easier to export and migrate your block content in Drupal 8. And the big thing, custom block types. Just like content types, but with a unique set of fields. So fieldable blocks are a big deal. Anyone that tried out the Beans module in Drupal 7 knows that was an attempt to make blocks fieldable. For ourselves, we ended up relying on fieldable panel panes, which was in the panels universe. But now it's in core, so that does change some things. You've got custom block types, each with their own sets of fields and display settings. They're reusable. You can use them in more than one region. You aren't limited. And managing blocks, though, still has some challenges. It's fine when you only have 8 or 10, but if anyone's tried to look at the block admin screen, once you have 30 or 40 or more, it's a bear, right? So one of the things that people used was context in Drupal 7. That's still around, but there's some other new options too, like block visibility groups. And that lets you stay on this page. At the top, it has like a little filter for block visibility, and you can create your own sets of filters. And that way you can kind of control, I'm just looking at blocks for...
Sure. So basically, block visibilities are your custom block types. If I'm creating blocks for a node that I want specific to an animal content type, I'm going to create a block visibility group, animal node blocks, put these blocks inside of it, and then when I want to just adjust blocks for that node, I can come here, click on that filter, and it just shows me those blocks rather than like my site name and all of the global ones.
Would it apply for page name, for like a actual node number?
It just classifies blocks. That's all it does. So whatever blocks you want to use, you can create the own name. Like you can create whatever name you want. If I'm using just blocks that go into paragraphs, then I might create a paragraphs one.
You could create your own group.
Yeah.
Like you could say, this is just for my news page,
Yep.
and then
filter. You can turn visibility on and off for regular blocks, just ordinarily, but this would,
Yeah.
yeah, just for managing this screen, right? If you don't want to go back to context, which wasn't really ready for Drupal 8 anyway until recently, as far as I know. Oh, and place block is another really cool thing that we'll do a brief demo of. Place block is a way to go to any page in your site and then insert a block while you're on that page. So you don't have to go back to this admin UI, try and figure out where the region is, and then add your rules where you want it to appear, and then you can do it all on the page you're editing, which is really cool. And settings tray is another powerful one that I kind of threw onto this presentation a few days ago. I'm not terribly familiar with it, and maybe we can give some kind of justice
in the
to
demo.
explain it. It is in the demo.
It's in the demo.
I just haven't really used it, but it looks promising. So with that, we'll do just another brief demo, this time about how blocks can be used in the site. And
Yeah.
feel free to skip around if...
That's probably exactly what I'm going to do, because basically here all I'm doing is going to create a custom block of a type of button. I'm going to rebuild this button that I just made the Twig template for, and I'm actually going to use that Twig template in the button. So the nice thing, like Dan said, custom block types, they're content types. They're like mini little nodes that you can create however you want, or paragraphs or anything. That's the nice thing about Drupal 8. Since everything's kind of block-based, everything's fieldable, everything's an entity, you can use 6 different things to put fields on and build in the same way. It's just whatever's going to fit your need. So I'm adding all of these fields, which I'm not going to make you sit and listen to or watch. There's, oh, look, salmon, sand, ghost, that's my button colors. And all of my fields look like that. And then you go in, and just like on a content type, you can manage display, set how they're going to be, manage your form view, which that's the best thing that I like about Drupal 8 is your form view.
Lost your slide.
Oh, did I? So after I create the block, guess what, or the block type, guess what I'm going to do?
I don't know. What are you going to do?
I'll find it. I don't want to ruin the supplies. I'm going to create an actual block using that block type, just like I'd create a node. It's fantastic.
As you're doing that, you're finding your place there. One neat little trick that I read about that I haven't really tried yet is, you know, this whole concept of editing blocks on a node, which is sort of what place block does. I believe you can create a entity reference to your custom block types on a node. So like I have a basic page and I click edit, and of course I got my title and body field, and then because you're embedding your custom blocks, you can edit them on that same edit screen.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone's tried that or done that, but
Yeah.
it's sort of similar to the paragraph experience, but
I don't know why
relying
this
on
keeps
core
pausing.
blocks. Probably because you're trying to do it on one screen or the other.
Maybe there. Will it stay? Will it stay? Okay.
It'll be easy to all right.
That was fun. I'm not going to try skipping around anymore. But basically, I'm creating this block, and then just like any block, you go in and place it in a region. And this is going to place it globally on every single node. Since this is a custom button that I'm creating that deals with animals, which is one of the content types in our little shop of layouts, I probably don't want it to be global, but that's the only choice. Like there's no way to say, hey, just put it in this one spot yet. So there it's on an animal. I don't really want that, so I'm just going to remove it globally. And then I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, how many ways can I put this block on a page? I'll try something else. I'm going to try place block, which basically turns this into an IPE panels-like experience. I click there, choose the block that I want to place in the footer, and say, okay, I don't want to display the title. Save the block, and it is on my page. The weird thing, this took me a little bit to understand. I thought I was doing something wrong. When you click save, you don't stay on the node. You go to the blocks layout page. For some weird reason, they did it that way. So, but the thing is, it still puts it globally. That's the bad thing about place block. It just lets you place it in the region, but it's still going to go globally in that region, everywhere that region is.
Is that entirely true? Is anyone
That is entirely true.
played with that?
I played with it for like an hour, and I could not figure out any other way to do
Okay.
it. Which, granted, it's only an hour, but yeah, I couldn't figure out any way not to put it globally without this sweet thing, block visibilities group. This works just like context or visibility rules in D7, where you can say, okay, I'm going to add this condition, and I have all of these choices to choose from that says, I just want it on this one single content type, and then I can put it in that region, forget about it, it's not going to show up on my home page. So
I think, but the cool point is that you can go to any node you want and just place a block on that page, and it can be these new custom blocks that you've created with different
exactly.
fields.
So place block works really well with block visibility group if you created those rules first and then place them on your page. That would be the route that I would take if I used blocks a lot, which I don't.
So
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
We can skip the rest.
All right.
We covered the good
Probably
stuff.
need to edit our video length a little down a little bit. As I said,
Yeah.
it's the first time we're doing this talk, so I appreciate your bearing with us as we
Please give us a 5 when you rate us. We won't accept anything less.
when we work through our kinks here, because we want to give you good information, but not bury you down on too much of that. So views is still a great query builder, but now it's in core, as many of you know, in Drupal 8. And views is also an important layout tool that's in core. Do you guys think of views when you think of layout? Right? You have your options of displaying lists of content is a frequent use of it. Different formats you can display in table, list, and grid. I generally stick with list, but the grid option in views has changed to where now it's using divs instead of tables, which is a big improvement for responsive design. So that was an improvement in Drupal 8.
And the nice thing is they do the math for you. You click on grid, tell it how many columns you want, and it's just going to automatically divide it in CSS. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Have you used it?
Huh? Oh, yeah. For media.
Nice.
Yeah, come listen to me talk about media tomorrow. Drupal 8. Excited?
For building your media library.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You use your views displays, your display modes to lay out content, so it hooks into that. You can affect header and footer content in your view. You can add rendered entities, including blocks or even other views. So you can put a view in a view. Mm-hmm. Which I guess you always could do that with
It's like
attachments.
Inception. Yeah. It's like Inception.
But it's a little more advanced. I think it doesn't have to
faster? Does it, because that could be really slow down your view.
Yeah, and actually that's the thing. Views are in core. A lot of the places you use them, like Panelizer, aren't. Me, in Drupal 7, a lot, I like to use contextual filters and create a view for a node, put it in Panelizer, call it a day. It's so memory intensive. It'll break Panelizer if you have more than one in a panel, which is weird. Didn't do that in D7. So, yeah, putting a lot of views in a lot of places, I'd be careful, but they're definitely usable.
Yeah. So you can definitely affect your layout with views. That's a screen you're familiar with. I'll kind of, keeping your eye on the time here, I'll skim along. So WYSIWYG, I don't recommend WYSIWYG for layout. However, it can affect layout, at least within your content area. If anyone's trying to do layout within the CK editor, I'd say please don't, but in a pinch, if you don't have any technical chops and you don't have anyone to help you, whatever
do it however you can do it. Yeah.
But it is useful still for copying, pasting long form content. And some people have done some work with CK editor templates for layout type stuff. I have not used that. But they're not ideal, but it does affect, or can affect your layout for sure. So that's all core stuff. There's probably a few more things, but that's kind of what we're going to cover for core. But then we want to get into, I don't want to say the more interesting stuff, because core is pretty cool, but this gets us more excited than core. Yeah, because this is generally how we do layout. So what kind of layout options beyond the core does Drupal offer? So the first thing we talk about is paragraphs. I love paragraphs. I don't know why, but when I was thinking of imagery for paragraphs, I thought of cookies.
They're like that. They are though. They're like
tasty
that.
little cookies.
And you don't want to stop eating them. And using them.
You guys all familiar with paragraphs? You use paragraphs? Everyone's using paragraphs?
No,
She does.
none of that. Yeah, this is what we want.
Anyone hate paragraphs? Happy to hate a cookie, right? Okay, so paragraphs, little chunks of goodness, sections of structured content. Easy to rearrange the order of them. There's views integration. We can use them for media, we can use them for content, and we can use them for layout. We can use them to go into your body field and say, as an editor, I'm going to make three column layout here and just do it all within one screen. That's through nested paragraphs, which are super cool. And to demonstrate briefly what you can do in paragraphs,
we're going to play a video which will attempt to pause.
Is only yes. Adam, take it away.
Yeah.
Where's my cursor? Oh, is that? Yeah.
Nope, we're good. Okay,
moving.
yeah, don't touch it. Yeah, so we do a lot of paragraphs, and this is just going to show you how to build one if you're not familiar with it. Guess what? It's going to be an animal button. Hope you're not sick of that yet, because we have like 2 more demos that involve it. So, yeah, this works very similar to how blocks now work, how nodes work. Add your fields, set your displays, all of that stuff. The biggest thing is, like Dan said it, this is the only option that's really nested. So like if you're going to build an accordion, I would do an accordion item paragraph within an accordion group. Or anytime I'm creating like layout stuff, I use a lot of Flexbox, so now I just do it without nested, but you can create, we used to create columns and you have, okay, I want 3 columns, and then all my little paragraphs within. So they're pretty handy, and I have yet to find anything that I can't do in them, which I don't think I've ever been able to say that with Drupal before.
What are you showing here?
So basically this is just adding description field, my button field, my button color. The also nice thing is I always use a preview view mode, and I add an admin description field, because anybody familiar with paragraphs, when you get like 20 of them on a page, they all just say paragraph type of, and no editor is going to look through that and say, well, which one actually, holds my video? So I add an admin description field that I only show on the node edit screen through the preview, and then they can just say, okay, this is, the Saturday Night Live video or whatever.
Yeah, can I get maybe a little group vote here? Is this seeing sort of these little pre-recorded videos, are you getting any value out of these, or would it be better if we just broke to like a live demo kind of work? Does anyone have a preference? Or is it all kind of equally?
Live demo? Yeah? Okay.
I'm thinking.
Okay, we can do that.
We do have time for that. I'm just going to do a little switcheroo here. I want to give you guys something good to take away, not my email. Not my email. Okay. Okay.
You can change the label on the form display of paragraphs.
You can now. I actually just learned that, and you can also publish and unpublish, which is sweet. Just learned that as well. Yeah. There's a lot of options. I also like now I have a view placer paragraph, so I can put a view anywhere I want within a paragraph that's restricted just to admins, because I don't really trust editors to mess with views.
Okay. So maybe I'll do a little thing here for you to make it easier. And display.
Mirror. That'd be awesome. Here, this is going to take forever.
Yeah. Is this it? No. All right. Well,
I can just work on there too.
all right.
Okay.
Good luck.
So basically we had this landing page. This was a design that we created for this. Well, how the heck are we going to build it? This is the home page. So first of all, I'm using Page Manager with Panelizer. But every one of this is a paragraph. This is one paragraph field that's in a block that's put onto Page Manager. These are all paragraphs in one field within my main content section that's also on that. So what does this look like?
Can we go right to the paragraphs?
Oh, yeah, which is, there we go, load. So we see we have this block which holds a paragraph field, which is homepage widgets. So when I edit, I built all of these paragraphs. One of the nested ones is icon text group. So I had all those little pieces of text content with an icon next to them. Well, you could have done that with field collections in Drupal 7, but they don't exist in Drupal 8. And plus, I prefer paragraphs because field collections has a bunch of like markup that I don't like. So I created this paragraph with these two fields on it that holds all of these other paragraphs.
Normally, one of the cool things about paragraphs is you go to a node, you click edit, and there's all your paragraphs. Because this is a landing page, we kind of had a different structure for it.
Yeah, so these are all of my little pieces of paragraphs that go within this icon text item paragraphs field. In Drupal 8, paragraphs is a reference, so it's reference paragraphs. That's how you would get the field on there. And then it behaves just like Drupal 7. So I'm also saying, okay, in Twig, anything that has a layout of 33%, I'm adding that as a class, so I can set all of these columns without needing to nest anything inside. It's all pretty cool. So that looks like paragraphs type. And these are all of the different things that we use on a regular basis. There's a lot of them. So that little icon text icon is just these. I have my field admin description, which is only going to be for editors so that they know what they're looking at. And then I have all of these other fields that I can choose how I want to display. So my image field, which is rendered entity, you'll learn about that tomorrow. My text, my layout, and I'm setting this as a key because in Twig, I'm going to call this field and then use that without filter, not to display it to anybody, but I can get the key value and not have to do like clean class markup or any of that stuff. Then my admin description is just shown in my preview display. And that's the only thing. I also am displaying the layout so that an editor knows, well, I chose to be 33%. Just little tips to help people out. So I'll get to where I added the field for paragraphs. So I just have to load it then.
But the general idea for paragraphs, right, is that you, just like you saw with custom block types, they're fieldable. You can make different kinds. We often make ones for adding video to pages or adding a special call-out header slider thing. We have like whole different flavors of them.
Yeah.
And you can drop them on a page. You can rearrange them.
And you can define which ones go in which field, which is nice. So here I'm adding all of these, but I'm not allowing the individual ones so that somebody couldn't place one icon. They have to place the group and use stuff within there. So you can really structure how people are going to use it so that you don't break your design, or so that they can't break your design as much as they might be able to otherwise sway.
Now, why would I want to roll my own versus downloading something like Bootstrap paragraphs for Drupal 8?
Funny that you asked that, and I actually didn't know you were going to ask that. So Drupal 8, when I first started learning it, I adopted paragraphs probably a solid year ago in Drupal 7 and have never looked back. So I knew I wanted to use that, but I saw Bootstrap paragraphs, so I'm like, this is going to be great. This is awesome. They did all my work for me. I'm going to sit here and just watch YouTube and get paid for it, right? But they do a lot of good things out of the box, which is great. They also do a lot of weird things because paragraphs, especially when they're nested, any field that's on one is going to be able to be used on another one. So for instance, they have color, kind of like similar to my layout field, where if somebody chooses blue, every single paragraph within that is going to be blue. So if you have a blue accordion, every single accordion item within that is going to be blue unless they change it to green. Then you'd have blue, green, like fighting. So they didn't limit things enough, and there's like 87 color options to choose from, and what editor wants to like know what seafoam coral is, you know? So
So
I would recommend doing your own.
Yeah, yeah. Once you learn how to make it like your content types, it's not that difficult. So I know that we're kind of skimming over some of this, but we don't want to get too in depth into any one topic. We just want to give you a broad overview of how these different tools can be used. So paragraphs is great. We love it. We didn't demo this, but you can also use it for things like layout and nesting paragraphs and separating things into columns, all within that single edit screen of your node, which is very powerful, especially for non-technical editors.
And if you have more questions about any of this, track me down. I'd love to talk about this stuff all day. So
The demo site you're showing, is that available anywhere that we can download and look at?
It could be. We weren't planning on it. We were kind of putting it together and then thinking, oh, well, let's show some videos, and that way we don't have to worry about, you know.
internet and
Yeah, but yeah, I can find a way to include that.
That'd be great. 'Cause,
Yep.
you know, we'll just poke around at it at our own time, look how you built everything, would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, we'll see. So panels was and still is one of our main tools. It's powered by Page Manager. Has been one of the most popular modules in Drupal for a long time, top 30 or something like that. If you're new to panels, if you ever tried to dip your toe in it and you come to a screen that kind of looks like that's just a small section of what you would see in Drupal 7, you might be terrified of what you see there because there's so many options. It's super flexible, and but it has been simplified in Drupal 8. They've been stripping out things that they don't think we need anymore, things that were duplicated, and building it all around a suite of modules rather than this whole series of different modules that are all part of the panels family. So that means things like chaos tools, panels, page manager, panelizer, and the panels in place editor, or the IP editor, are all being worked on and slimmed down for Drupal 8. Some are not ported to Drupal 8 and others are no longer needed. Fieldable panel panes is no longer needed because we can make blocks fieldable.
blocks are exactly what fieldable
So
panel
that's
panes
got rid
were.
of, I believe mini panels is coming to Drupal 8, but I don't know that it has yet.
Yeah.
And panels everywhere, if anyone's tried to use that, it's worth noting with panels and display suite, we're always talking about editing that content region of your site and not the headers and footers. Those are never really touched by panels. And so panels everywhere was an attempt to replace the whole block system. Does anyone, well, some people have used it. It's a little tricky to use.
Yeah.
And then it works with the layout plugin, the layout API. So yeah, there's the screen that you might see if you're going into a Drupal 7 site for panels, and you might not know where to begin. But I'm going to try and make that a little simpler. Of course, then Panelizer was the way to have custom layouts and content on an individual node basis, right? So that was super powerful. Again, this could be an example of the kind of screen you would see when you came to the edit screen. So it was a little hairy if you were new to it, but it's very powerful. Way to manage a layout and the field placement across different views modes, and by view modes I mean back to that core concept of you've got your default view, your teaser view, you can make additional ones. Now in core, that's in core, you can make additional view modes. It does support revisions, which is great. And another example of the kind of things you would see when you're editing in panels is this.
You want to do that, or you just want to show them again?
Yeah, let's just show them again.
Okay.
Oh, don't do that. Is that what you did last time?
No, yeah, you're right.
So we're going to show you a little demo of
Look at
panels
that.
in action. And how you can move a mouse when you're not looking at a screen. I thought it was really cool that I had a separate view on my desktop than up there, but it can be a little challenging at moments like this. So it's the
D8.
D8. There.
Yep, that one.
This one?
Yep. That's the one.
Oh, I already had that one open, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay. So how can we use panels on
Cool.
a site like this?
So-
or are we?
The weird thing is we are. There's no panels in structure anymore. There's no global UI for it. It's all done at the content type level or the block level or whatever entity you're panelizing, because it can be more than content types.
So a big change there in Drupal 8.
Yep. So on your manage display screen, I've already panelized this one, but normally you would see your list of fields right here, and then there's this little button that says panelize this view mode. That's going to panelize the default view mode for this entire content type. And then you can say, well, I kind of like IPE so that I can adjust nodes, so I'm going to click this little button that says, now editors can just go in and change every single node to a different thing, and we can have 87 different layouts. So what it looks like, these two basically just ignore unless you really love context. I find you don't need them with IPE and stuff like that. You can choose your layouts. And they're really easy to do.
There's some that come predefined,
Yep.
and then there's some that we introduced.
So these are through the layout plugin. You
Right.
can change your layout.
And the way we made those is with template files.
Yep. And then choose, so you got to put your existing content somewhere in this new template. So that's what I did there. Update and save. And then now you can go to content, and this will be really familiar to the customized display screen in Drupal 7. Works really the same way, only you notice everything's a block. Almost all layout modules plug into the blocks UI.
Which is
So-
a big change.
Yeah, which is huge. Everything's a block. So add new block. You have your regular blocks, your content for your node. It automatically detects all your fields. Custom blocks. So any custom block type that you created and then created a block of that you can do. And then any module blocks that are available, like Flippy, which I have on there. If you don't use it, I recommend it. Super accurate mousing.
So this is a simple one-column layout, right? So what's the big deal? This looks just the same as when you're editing a content type. But if we chose to, we could say, no, we want a 3-column layout. And then the power here is that I can say I want this field in the right column, and these fields in the main column, and this field up at top. And that's a way that I can rearrange my content on a node-by-node basis to affect its layout.
If anybody has never seen this lizard, it's the Spider-Man lizard from Africa. It's pretty sweet. So this is the layout that I just created for the animal content type. But let's do what Dan said and say, well, in this one, I want to be a sidebar. So all I do is click in there, and then all of a sudden I've got a sidebar field that I can drag stuff into.
And we're doing this from a running angle, so good job. Did it.
I'm good at mousing. And then I can save that. One of the really cool things about the blocks UI and the way panels works at it is I can go in and say, okay, I want to manage my content. I'm going to create a custom block right on this single page and do it all right here. I don't have to mess with the block UI or anything. And if you plug paragraphs into it all, well, now I can put widgets, which are paragraphs, wherever the heck I want. I've got all of them available, and I can just slap them anywhere on the page.
Can you do the math one? Or are they not really?
What's that?
Can you do like a math
Yeah.
one? So if you use paragraphs, you kind of know this functionality. It's just integrated in this example with Panelizer. You can do this kind of stuff globally, but you can do it on an individual node basis too.
Take place.
And then
Did
down.
create it.
With the tabs again. How's that at?
It might just be the internet is not running fast enough. So yeah, this is why you don't live demo and you make videos instead. But that's basically how it happened. You can save it and then go back and place it on there. Then you can also revert to default, which will say, okay, do you really want to kick it back? Yes, and now it's back to my default 1 column. So that's the power of it. It just makes it really easier for editors to kind of build their own stuff and do however they want.
Now, this layout here on the bottom is different than you guys have played with panels and Panelizer in
Yeah.
Drupal 7. How much of that, Adam, is our own custom work, or how much is
None of it.
built in?
This is all built in. So any block system is available in your managed content.
I mean the way it looks.
Your Crank cut it. This is what it looks like.
Okay. Yeah.
The only thing I've ever done for custom, and I don't think we're allowing people to do it anymore, is so you can edit your existing stuff. I don't know what I just did there.
Just say got it.
So you could allow somebody to edit this thing right there. Update it. Normally there's, okay, do you want to save this as default or do you want to save it as custom? Well, I decide what the defaults are. So I don't want editors to go in there and all of a sudden switch every single basic page on the University of Minnesota Law School site to be the default like layout with the little caption that they made or whatever. So we generally take away that power and permissions, which is why we don't see it here, but that's the only part I've customized.
Okay.
So they made it look really nice and easy for Drupal 8,
It looks a lot.
which is nice.
Yeah, a lot better UI than
Yep.
before. A lot less confusing. If anyone's tried to drag and drop stuff
Yeah.
before.
And I have yet to break it other than putting 2 contextually filtered views on 1. That's the only thing I've found that'll break it, which I can't really say in Drupal 7 because I broke it a lot there. So
You know, as much time, which wasn't much, but you did spend some time finding these cool animals. I'm thinking we should have made that more part of the.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we got the homepage. You can show them the homepage. There's a view on there that shows them.
All right. So keeping an eye on time here. We're getting down to the bottom. So
Let's scroll down.
let's.
Can anybody name all those? No?
This is my favorite.
Yeah. That is from Madagascar, and he's supposed to be evil. Like, people kill him on sight because there's like a native legend that if he will stab his long middle finger through like your aorta,
no,
it's crazy.
no,
People have like weird ideas. I did a lot of research for this because I've never done it before, so I wanted to be prepared.
What is it called?
The II.
The II.
Yep.
Like that. Okay, so that was a very brief introduction and paragraphs and Panelizer. If you're not familiar with those two, those are great starting points for customizing. The last option, a display suite. This is a cool one too, and one that I had used years ago. It's still around in Drupal 8. I think it was one of the, it beat panels into Drupal 8, I know. And there is work being done on sort of making this part of core with the fieldable, or what's the term? I forget the name of the module, but
Field layouts.
yeah, field layouts. But I think we'll skip a demo of this based on time, but generally the idea is similar to what you've seen. You've got your fields, right? But you can change layout just like you could in panels, where you can say, hey, I want this to be this node to use 3 columns or 2 by 3s or whatever, and then you can drag and drop your fields around.
The only thing to really note on that, Panelizer, you don't need to create a new view mode for it because it just kind of does the Panelizer node for that. In order to change your layout in Display Suite, you have to have a pre-existing view mode based on that, because you can only say, okay, on this node, I want to use this view mode. So you might end up with however many view modes you have layouts for or situations for, which can be kind of tedious.
So let me skip ahead, and then if we have a minute, we'll get back into Display Suite. I think, what time are we supposed to be done? 3:15?
3:15.
Okay.
Like I said, if anybody, like if we're going too fast, you didn't get it, or you want to argue anything, find me. I would love to talk about it.
So what have we learned, if anything, so far? We learned that layout comes from these 2 main areas, layout and core in Drupal 8, with these things we talked about very briefly about what theme you choose, what templates, what regions you have, how you use blocks and views, and then how you can extend layout using these great tools like panels, like paragraphs, like Display Suite, and also just different grid systems that you might bring in, like Singularity or Suzy, or well, I don't know if I'd call Flexbox a grid system, but it's a
No,
tool.
but it's fun to play with.
Yeah. So as you look at landing pages, has our approach to building a landing page changed in Drupal 8?
For us, not really. And mainly because most of our work is still in Drupal 7, and the sites that we're going to push people to in Drupal 8, we don't want it to be an abrupt editing experience change. So I've found a way to pretty much copy anything that I've done in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. It might not be the best way to do it, and there's better stuff coming in core like field layout and stuff that I'll definitely explore. But if you did it in Drupal 7, you can do it in Drupal 8, just maybe not with the same module.
Yeah, and keep it, revisit blocks.
Yeah.
See if what you get out of core is something that can work for you.
Yep.
Question?
Can you explain what you mean by landing pages? Because,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Sure.
I think I use landing pages, but they're not really different. They're just like a section header.
Well,
You know,
right. A lot of times, I think they are. In our case, they are different. They're often unique cases. Like usually, in our experience, a homepage is different than the rest of the site.
Right.
Right, and that's like your primary landing page is a homepage. But it might be like, the landing page could be a news section of a large organization that has tons of news, right? And that's where they're displaying, here's what's new, here's what people are liking, so that's unique. And then when you get into the individual nodes, each one of them might look alike. They might all say like title, body, image, right? And that doesn't have to change, but a lot of times people say, oh no, we want to have, this row of images, we want to have this on the right side and this is the left. We want to do our quotes a different way. And so we've got all these different components that we're bolting together to make a landing page. And when you do that, that's where you go, geez, I don't want to, how am I going to do this in Drupal? And that's where we look at things like paragraphs or panels as a way to not only for us to build them, but to then hand them over to the client and say, now you can edit this without having to, edit a template file or
And you
or
don't
know how to
need a
CSS.
million content types. Like in older Drupals before paragraphs and stuff, like if you wanted a special page, you might create a content type just for that one page, which is ridiculous, But that was the way that you could do it. Now there's a lot more tools.
If you're interested in getting involved, there in the layout initiative, there's some links on IRC and in Slack where they're talking about layouts and the new things that are coming down the pike and asking questions and seeing how you might contribute on a code sprint. And we've got about 3 minutes left, so if anyone wants, we can do a brief run through on Display Suite, or otherwise we'll just open the floor to any questions we have.
Does anybody have any questions? Let's start there. No? Wow, we've amazed them.
Yes, sir.
Is there any kind of engine that can convert the whole PHP template set level to a Twig system?
I have no idea.
Oh yeah, so the question is, can you convert a PHP template to a Twig layout?
I would guess not, just out of the box. I have no idea. I've never really
Yeah.
looked at that, but the language is completely different. So I would guess not. If somebody did build that, they're really smart. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Have you had any problems about the reusability of the paragraphs content?
Good question.
So the question is, any issues with reusing paragraph content?
Yeah, so I was in a BOF in DrupalConf Baltimore that discussed the same thing after a big Blue Cross Blue Shield because they built their entire site in paragraphs. And people were like, well, you've never really been able to do that. You can if you put them into blocks, because blocks are reusable. It gets tedious because then you have a bunch of blocks for everything that you want to reuse, and you couldn't put that reusable block inside of a paragraph unless you called in a block entity reference field. But it can be done. You just kind of have to hack around it right now. However, one of the maintainers of paragraphs said that that's the biggest thing that they're working on.
Because I know there's been criticism in comparison with like bricks or the ECK that the construction kit, where there is reusability.
Yeah, Bricks is another layout option that I'm not familiar with other than by name, and I looked at their page and I was going to mention them in the presentation, but that's another layout initiative that a third-party module. So
Yeah, so it's not super easy to do yet, but I think they're definitely working on it from what he said.
So our recommendation though for layout in Drupal 8,
Panelizer, paragraphs.
look at Panelizer, look at paragraphs, and revisit the block system and see if it makes sense for you.
Definitely.
All right. So thank you so much for listening
Yeah.
to us, and please give us your feedback online that joined in. We welcome your feedback so we can kind of refine this and make it better.
Yeah.
Thank you.